And that's very much seen on these demonstrations, which we see both in universities and in other parts of on the streets of around these demonstrations on Gaza. So that's the second one. And then we have a right-wing anti-Semitism, which is from fascist movements. And I think on campus, obviously what's mobilizing at the present time is this left-wing form of anti-Semitism, which essentially is inheriting a particular view of the world, which comes from the latter part of the Soviet Union and the Eastern European states, which, as we know, had a series of anti-Semitic campaigns, constructed Zionism as racist, as imperialist. And this has sort of morphed into now a quite popular movement. And I think that what worries me on campuses is that Jews are increasingly asked questions by non-Jews which they should not be asked. It's like, where do you stand on the occupation of Palestine? Where do you stand on the Gaza war? Whereas British non-Jews were not asked those questions about the invasion of Iraq, for example. And I think that, to me, is the big problem. So this left-wing anti-Semitism is what's mobilizing a kind of combination of anti-imperialism, anti-colonialism, is what is mobilizing what is really taking place in campuses. And also, I have to say, it doesn't just affect students in their daily life. It also affects those of us academics working in the area of Middle East studies.
With the ongoing conflict now in Gaza, and also the October 7th attacks have led to a surge of anti-Semitism, there seems to be a need for a space of dialogue between Jewish students, Muslim students, and other students from different political streams. How can college campuses initiate such type of dialogue? And is this dialogue going to be fruitful? Does it have this possibility?
Well, I think one of the problems is we're living in a very free-ball moment, and the kind of case taken by South Africa to the International Court of Justice on the question of genocide in Gaza, in a sense, underlines how difficult it is to have a dialogue, because what activist students who are on the side of, or what they see as the side of Palestine, I'm not really sure it is the side of Palestine in reality. I think it's a sort of an imagined Palestine rather than the real Palestine, which I know. I think that they would say that you cannot have dialogue with people committing genocide. That is the kind of state that we're in, a very horrible binary moment in which you have those people who support genocide and those people who are opposed to genocide. Now, I have spent a lot of my life, not in both in academic life and also in my public activities, in promoting dialogue between Jews and Arabs, for instance. I think that the only way that we can resolve anti-Semitism, but also resolve the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, is by contact at every level. And I think academics and students can play an important role in that, in terms of the kind of work they do, contacts between universities on both sides can actually play an important role in resolving the conflict. However, I absolutely think that at the present time we're in a very difficult situation. So I think universities should do everything possible to create an atmosphere in which those who want dialogue can in fact engage in it without fear. I know full well that one of the problems is that those on the, inverted commas, pro-Palestine side, and I would regard myself, by the way, as pro-Palestinian in the sense I want to see a Palestinian state alongside Israel, but those who see themselves as pro-Palestinian can in fact begin to discuss with those who regard themselves as pro-Israeli. And I think that goes back to what I began with, that I think that what October the 7th has revealed is that we do have to sort out the relationship between Jewish identity in the diaspora and its relationship with Israel, where, of course, nearly 50% of Jews actually live. And of course, many Jews will have close relations, friends, and so on and so forth who live in Israel. So I think that is something we have to bear in mind. So I think we have to encourage dialogue, and that's why I also would emphasize the question of freedom of speech. And here I think we have to accept that we're going to sometimes hear things we don't want to hear. But I always think that that's better to hear something that you don't want to hear, as opposed to encouraging people to fight over it. So I think it's a difficult thing to do, but I think that I would like to see in British universities, for instance, tours of Breaking the Silence, for instance, the Israeli organization which talks about soldiers who talk about what happened in the occupation. I would like to see tours of the bereavement circle, which bring together Palestinians and Israelis who have lost close relatives who talk to each other. And I think it would be very important to use the resources of the Middle East, where these projects, these NGOs, such as Standing Together, for instance, which is an organization of Palestinians and Israelis trying to sort out how to live together, both in Israel and between Israel and the Palestinian territories, that we need to use those resources in universities to show that actually in the Middle East, on the ground, there are a large number of people who really do want to work together to solve the crisis. And I think it is the Middle East and the people in the Middle East that can teach the people in other parts of the world that actually we need dialogue. Because for them, it's not an abstract question. It's not a question of shouting a slogan and wearing a keffiyeh. For people in the Middle East, it's a question of life or death, and actually being able to live a normal life without fear. And I think that's something which those NGOs in the Middle East perhaps can teach us within the current campuses of where these terrible free ball atmosphere have created an awful binary, as I said, between those people who you can't speak because otherwise you'll be also defending the indefensible, and we have to actually begin to create a different atmosphere. And so I think universities should be really using the resources, particularly from the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. These NGOs, Gibbet Haviva is another one. There are also other political organizations such as Land for All, where Palestinians and Israelis meet, discuss, and try to work out a solution for their future.
Thank you, Professor Strawson. In our last minute, beside all the important things you mentioned and what should be done, but what should be done more to make the Jewish students and faculty feel safe again on campus?
Well, I think the first thing is that we have to do two very practical things. One is security. I think that some times Jewish students, particularly in halls of residence, have not felt secure, and I think they have to be guaranteed that. But I do think at the end of the day, it is a question of inclusion. And I do think that I would like to see, and I have to say, this year, or the end of last year, when it was Hanukkah, for the first time, the Vice Chancellor of my university issued a Hanukkah greetings. Now, you might find this odd, but this is the first time, and I have been a member of staff for 49 years at our university, the first time I ever got a greetings for any Jewish festival whatsoever. And I thought I did write and congratulate her for sending it. I thought, particularly after October the 7th, I thought it was very good. But I think what universities need to do is normalize Jewish life, just like they should normalize Muslim life, Hindu life, Christian life, and Chinese culture, and so on and so forth. All of this is a question of just normalizing it.